troops. At the remote White Sands missile range in New Mexico, the Army has been perfecting a laser which it believes is capable of shooting down a satellite. This is the prototype of the weapon. The real thing has a beam of concentrated light 1 meter wide. If the president agrees to the test firing, the laser would be aimed from the New Mexico desert at a redundant Air Force satellite the size of a refrigerator orbiting 260 miles above the Earth. There's been strong opposition from American scientists.
This is a dangerous precedent for the United States because we have billions of dollars of vulnerable spy satellites that other countries like Iraq or North Korea could shoot at. By us shooting at satellites, we're saying it's okay for other countries to shoot at our very expensive satellites, and that could seriously impair our intelligence and military capabilities.
At the moment, what the Pentagon is planning is not prohibited by any international law, and it's raised fears of an arms race in space. The more military hardware America puts into orbit, the more she has to protect it, and the more her enemies might try to attack. The first act of aggression in space may not be far away. Tom Carver, BBC News, Washington.
And now back to our main story and the continuing revelations concerning the circumstances of the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. The discovery that the driver of the car was 3 times over the legal alcohol limit has raised serious questions about the princess's security arrangements. In particular, whether she should have been allowed to refuse official Scotland Yard protection. Our correspondent, Neil Bennett, reports.
Diana did get official protection when she was with her 2 sons, but that was insisted upon because of their position as successors to the throne. When her status in public life began to change, and when she was on her own, she preferred to dispense with bodyguards from the Royal Protection Squad. It was a decision questioned then and questioned now.
I think those responsible for protection of royalty and other people in public life will have to learn the lessons of this. Diana should not have been allowed to decline this protection. That's my judgment. She would not be dead if she had been protected by the Royal Protection Squad still. We must ask why it was she was allowed to decline this protection.
In Paris, she relied on the security operation which surrounds the Al Fayed family. Mohammed Al Fayed, seen here when he recently took over at Fulham Football Club, employs experienced and highly trained bodyguards, mostly former military policemen or special forces personnel. They're forbidden to drink on duty, and the whole operation is regarded in the business as professionally run. Trevor Rhys-Jones, Dodi Al Fayed's bodyguard and the only survivor of the crash, certainly followed the first rule of the job. Those close to him say there was never any loose talk.
I didn't know until last night who he worked for. And to think that he was working for the Al Fayed company, and he was looking after, I would say, 2 of the top people in the world, perhaps.
They were being driven by Henri Paul, the Deputy Director of Security at the Ritz, but not a member of the personal protection team. Within the past few minutes, a spokesman for Mohammed Al Fayed said no one at the hotel had smelled alcohol on his breath. The spokesman also claimed the speedometer on the crashed car was stuck at 0, not at 120 miles an hour. Neil Bennett, BBC News.
The main focus of mourning for Princess Diana has become St James's Palace, where her body is lying. Thousands of people have been travelling there to write their messages of remembrance in the books of condolence. And our correspondent, Clarence Mitchell, is at St James's Palace. Clarence.
Yes, good evening, Martin. You join us at the very end of this massive queue that's been building up throughout the day. It's at its deepest ever now as it snakes its way up and down the Mall, on its way back down behind me to St James's Palace. Many people are still arriving. You can see them coming down this channel here. And when they join the end of this line, they know that they have a guaranteed 8-hour wait ahead of them before they see the condolence books that they so want to sign. The groundswell of public feeling for the princess took to the streets of Royal London today in tangible form. This was the queue to sign the books of condolence. It went on and on down the Mall, at times as far as the eye could see. The people here knew they'd have to wait for hours. They didn't mind, such was their determination to pay their respects, to say goodbye to Diana before her funeral. Even passing through St James's Palace at a rate of 300 people an hour, these thousands knew they'd have to give up much of their day to reach here. The 16 books of condolence were expanded from their original 5 to cope with the demand. Once inside these quiet rooms, people are given as much time as they need to collect their thoughts. For those here, the news of Diana's death was a moment they'll never forget.
I'm from Hawaii, but I heard the news en route while I was in Japan, and it came as a real shock. So I was on my way to London and thought I'd take the time to pay respects.
It was at the death of Martin Luther King, and I was out again with people when there were demonstrations after his death or the death of Robert Kennedy. I would say, I don't know, for sure comparable, if not more.
The floral tributes too just continue to build. Those mourning here represent a real cross-section of society reflecting the national mood. The young, the old, the tourists and the curious. Disabled mourners too are easily accommodated. Those who can't attend are welcome to send their messages by post. These queues will continue into the days and nights leading up until Diana's funeral.
It's likely that the books of condolence, once completed, will be offered to the Spencer family. It's the first time there's been such a public signing of such books. And with that, back to the studio.
Thank you, Clarence. And the next national news is, of course, the 9 o'clock news.